Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Your Honor, Mr. Eustace John and Mrs. John, Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Sam Condor, Honorable Hensley Daniel and Mrs. Daniel, Honorable Patrice Nesbitt, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Honorable Mr. Hector and Mrs. Hector, Honorable Kyle Powell, Honorable Dwight Cozier, Honorable Curtis Martin and Mrs. Martin, advisors to the Nevis Island Administration, Honorable Van Samry, Leader of the Opposition, survivors of Christina, family, friends, returning nationals, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me say I'm very happy to see that there are so many people here this afternoon. And secondly, I'm happy that the Deputy Prime Minister could join us today. I believe it's the first time anybody from St. Kitts in the administration on St. Kitts have come to Nevis on this occasion. So I think they deserve a round of applause. Indeed and in fact, the tragedy is not just a Nevis tragedy. It's a St. Kitts Nevis tragedy that happened 40 years ago. You know, the theme that is coming out of this afternoon service, memorial service, is not only hope, but the fact that we have to move on. We have to move on in life. And I think it is a good thing, and it is something that we should celebrate and we should embrace. This morning I was fortunate enough to travel to St. Kitts, to a service there for a lady who is 100 years old. She's a Nevisian. I am not sure where she was born, because she tells me her name was Lillian Hill, and her father was from St. John's. But I knew her in Cotton Ground all my life, and now she's embraced by the people of Tabernacle. She's still very alive, very bright, full of talk, and her family is with her. And she's doing very well. And I thought that in spite of the Christina, in spite of 40 years ago, people have to live, and people must move on and live on. And I'm happy to hear that. The minister didn't tell you that when he traveled on the sea bridge, he traveled with me. He actually begged me a lift over. He didn't tell you that. But at least it's a demonstration that we can work together. And there can be cooperation. There don't have to be absorption. Some people are afraid that one part will take over the other. I have no such fear, because nobody can take me over. And I always make that point. I can't be taken over by anybody. That's why some people just can't deal with me. But that's the way it goes. And I believe as long as the visions are confident in themselves, and as long as the visions are complete in themselves, they can always cope with St. Kitts and Kittitians. I really believe that. Now, we are speaking of the Christina and 40 years. And I want to make some individual references. I must tell you that Mrs. Leader kind of threw a serious bomb in my side, because I was going to use her as an example, because I met her a few days ago speaking to Miss Elliott. And she told me her story. And that story was going to be part of my delivery. But then she came this afternoon and told her story. And so I have to make the adjustment. But I just want to say very briefly that she and her family is the kind of example that I want to talk about in terms of survival. Mrs. Leader didn't just survive. She has thrived, or she has thriven, whichever word we want to use. Because here it is, she has a doctorate. But the doctorate in itself, for me, is not the achievement. It's what she has done with the doctorate. And what she has not said is that she is counseling people in Canada. She's helping people to put their lives together. She's helping people to give them a new direction. So out of her own suffering, out of her own pain and agony, she has been able to do something positive in her life and for other people who are alive. But if you knew Armin as a child, and I did, you wouldn't be surprised. I taught Armin in first form. It seems to me that her mother was alive because she was in second form when she died. And Armin was a very lively, vivacious, chatty, talkative young woman. Always had something to say to somebody. And it seemed to me this has served her very well, not only in terms of her job, her mission, but what she has done for her family. I want you to give the Brown family a round of applause. Because I met Armin's aunt, Una, and Una was even more vivacious and more chatty and had even more energy. And it is something that that family seems to have. It's something, oh, I believe that, Jennifer. I really believe that because it's in you as well. That is Ophelia, okay. And so it is good to look at the family and see how they have helped themselves and pulled themselves up by the bootstraps. Now, we speak of that family, the Parry family from Condor Road. They too have helped themselves. I have a feeling that Othniel was choking up this afternoon. It seems so to me. And can you imagine that after 40 years, the impact that it can still have on you? But nevertheless, that family has done well. Each of them has helped herself or himself. And they have moved on. And that is what is good about people who do not just survive, but who move forward and take life by the cuff and do what they have to do to make life a good thing for them. So we have those who were left behind, those who had to hold on to life, those who had to survive as they could. And I want to say to you that when you look at that tragedy, think of the Second World War. Think of the many people who were bombed in London or bombed in Germany, or think of the crazy wars they have in Africa when you have people who are butchered senselessly, and yet people still survive and people still do well. Because I believe deep inside in the human person is a desire to survive, a desire to do well. Even a sick man or sick woman, even in the case of imminent death, they want to procreate because they want to continue. They want their children to continue after them. And that is the essence of being a human being, survival. But as we speak about that, I also want to look at those who were there. Just about one or two who were there and what they have done. And I use Lofton Sargent because I've known Lofton Sargent for many years, since he was a child. He's from Cotton Ground, and he was a little boy. He swam ashore, I don't know. Well, let me say I don't know. Everybody in Cotton Ground could swim. So Lofton learned to swim pretty early. He survived. And his uncle Livingston Sargent, who was there, also survived. And neither knew that either was on the boat. But by the grace of God, they both survived. And I'm talking about Lofton because you see him sitting there humble. If he had remained in Nevis, he would have made the West Indies side. He was an outstanding bowler, an outstanding fieldsman, and an outstanding batsman at the age of 12. But he moved on, went to St. Croix, and then to the United States. He's an engineer. He travels all over the United States of America. Imagine this little boy from Nevis, like Alexander Hamilton. He's moving all over the United States doing good. He has a band. He plays Caribbean music. And he's a proud Nevisian, even though his father is Stanley Frank some Sankits. He's a proud Nevisian.